All right, welcome everyone. Thanks so much for joining. Let me just go ahead and share my screen here. All right, awesome. Welcome. Yeah, so excited to see everybody here. We've got so many people joining from so many different locations also, which is really cool to see. People from Florida, London, upstate New York. I think I saw Georgia, Florida, Nicaragua. It's unbelievable. So really appreciate you all taking the time to join us today to learn a little bit about ClickUp. Just as a reminder, today's session is all about ClickUp for beginners. So this is the ClickUp for Beginners webinar. And just to introduce myself, so my name's Elliot. I'm the manager of customer enablement here at ClickUp. And I did have a few housekeeping items that I wanted to go through before we get started. So first of all, just wanted to call out that the session length today is going to be about 30 minutes. We've actually got a ton of content. We may go a little bit over time just because I want to give some additional time at the end to answer questions. Also, just be aware we've also got a chat and a Q&A. So I can see everybody's already started to submit, where you're from. So feel free to introduce yourself. Let us know where you're from. Feel free to let us know, what you do and how you're using ClickUp in that chat as well. If you have any questions about ClickUp, just be aware that there's also a Q&A. So next to the messages tab in the upper right-hand corner of the webinar, you should see a section for docs and Q&A. If you have any questions about how to get started with ClickUp or any questions about how ClickUp operates or features or functionality, be sure to drop those questions in the Q&A because we do have, actually, we've got a bunch of team members with us here today backstage, and they're going to be answering those questions with you live. And then also just wanted to call out that there is also a docs tab there as well. If you were to click on that docs tab, you should be able to see the ClickUp for Beginner webinar resources doc. So that's actually a ClickUp doc. If you open that, that's going to take you here. So this is the ClickUp for Beginners resources. And here on the left-hand side, you can see we've got ClickUp for Beginners FAQ. We've got the ClickUp for Beginners certification. So if anybody's actually looking to complete a certification, I saw there were some questions about certifications earlier. Feel free to head over to ClickUp University and you can complete the beginner certification or building your first workflow certification, etc. We've also got a section here for product feedback. So that'll take you to Canny, where we actually do review the feedback that we get on feature requests. And then finally, we've got links to the Help Center. So if you've got any questions about functionality or you need help from our support team, you can head over there. One final thing I wanted to call out, today is going to be focused on ClickUp for Beginners, but we do have a Build Your First Workflow webinar taking place next week. I believe on Tuesday. So if you're interested in learning how to build a workflow, definitely check out that follow-up webinar that we're hosting. And I did want to take a moment to go over our agenda today. So I wanted to start out by just giving a quick introduction to ClickUp. From there, we'll talk about setting up your hierarchy for success. Next, we'll talk about creating effective tasks. From there, we'll talk about how to collaborate with your team. And finally, I'll give you some tips on how to keep track of everything that you need to work on. And I wanted to start today by talking a little bit about what ClickUp is. Work today is broken. We're more connected than ever, but that comes with a price. Teams are now juggling dozens of tools, chasing updates across endless email threads, and trying to untangle scattered conversations. And even when we have the right tools, they're often disconnected. And this forces us to switch context, duplicate efforts, and ultimately lose focus, which leads to the entire company moving more slowly than we really should. We refer to this often as the toggle tax. And that's where ClickUp comes in. ClickUp is a single platform that converges project management, knowledge management, and chat together, empowering teams to align faster, execute smarter, and move as one. And by powering it all with AI, ClickUp helps teams work more efficiently by automating repetitive tasks, delivering intelligent insights, and enabling smarter decision-making in real time. With ClickUp, you can plan, organize, manage, and track all your work in one place, whether you're a 10-person startup or a 50,000-person enterprise. So now that we've talked a little bit about what ClickUp is,
let's talk about how to get started in ClickUp and how to set yourself up for success. So let me go ahead and jump over to my workspace. And here you can see I'm logged into my workspace. My workspace name is ClickUp. And I'm currently in the Home tab, and I've disabled all my cards just so that you can focus on what I want to talk about. Because I want to talk first about the sidebar. The sidebar is where all of your work is going to take place and where you can navigate across all of the features of ClickUp. And where we're going to start is your hierarchy. So coming down here, you can see here are all of our spaces. And your spaces are basically going to be set up as your teams. So most often, your spaces will be established for each individual team. You can see I've got my marketing team here, an operations team, HR. But you may also have really large projects that you work on cross-functionally across everybody at the company, and you need visibility on those projects. And so that's why you can see for our yearly conference, we've created a space for that as well. Anytime you want to create a space, all you need to do is click on the plus button here next to your spaces, and you'll be prompted to set up that new space with all the default views, statuses, and click apps that you might want to use. Now, that might be confusing to you at first, so let's slow things down and take it step by step. So you can actually just click on Create Space here. Everything here in the starter space is going to be relatively useful to you. So let's go ahead and create our space. From here, we're going to be dropped into the overview of our space, which gives us oversight on everything that's taking place in the space, but we're not really ready for that. So we're going to move down to our lists and just talk about how to manage your lists. And the first best practice that I want you to incorporate is to start with 2 lists. And you're going to name one list for intake. So let me go ahead, click on the ellipses, choose rename, and call this list intake. And the second list you're going to want to add, so let me go ahead and click on the plus button here next to new space. So here's where I can create another list or add folders or documentation. And let's add a new list, and let's just call this ongoing projects. And so what I'm doing here is I'm creating one specific location to manage all of my currently new incoming ideas and projects for our team to work on or myself to work on. And I'm also creating one singular location for all of those projects that we've already triaged and decided that we are definitely going to prioritize and begin working on. So now that we've created our new space and our new lists, there's one other tip that I have for you with regard to the hierarchy. A lot of other teams are already working in ClickUp. So you can see we've got this spaces for strategic planning and the operations team and the HR team. And maybe I don't actually work with these teams on a regular basis. The second best practice that I have for you is to actually go ahead and hide any spaces that you're not currently working out of. So any space that you don't typically work out of on a daily basis, you can hide. To hide a space, all you need to do is mouse over that space, click on the ellipses. You'll have an option to hide the space. So let me just go ahead and do that for a few of the spaces here. And what you're going to be doing by doing this is cleaning up your hierarchy and just making it easier to navigate and a little bit less overwhelming. And just so you're aware, by hiding the space, you don't lose access to that space. If you get tagged in a project within one of those spaces, that space will automatically reappear for you, and you don't lose access to any of the work happening in those spaces. But by hiding the spaces, it does make navigation much easier. Okay, so now that we've set up our first space and we set up our first list, let's head back to our intake list and create our first task. When it comes to creating tasks, you can always create tasks manually. You can see up here, there's an add task button. So anytime that you have a meeting and as a result of that meeting, you've got a new idea that you want to work on, a new project, a new deliverable as part of a project, you can go ahead and click on the add task button to create a task for that new project. Alternatively, as your team gets a little bit more advanced in ClickUp and as you want to standardize your intake processes a little bit better, what you're going to want to be doing is starting to use forms for your intake. Now, a form can be accessed here in your views. So to add a form to your intake process, all you have to do is click on the plus view button here and choose form to add a new form. And you'll notice that when I do go ahead and add that new form, we've even got a form template here for project intake. And you can go ahead and use that project intake template as your first form. Now, we're not going to go into too much detail on forms in this session. just because this is ClickUp for beginners, but just be aware that that's how you would add a form and better standardize that process. And if you do want to learn more about using forms and standardizing your process and creating an actual workflow in ClickUp, definitely come to our next webinar, which is going to be teaching you how to build your first workflow in ClickUp. But for now, let's head back to our list and create our first task. So let's just say we had a meeting today, and let's just say maybe I'm on the marketing team and they came up with an idea for a new piece of content, and it's going to be centered around being the best version of yourself. So let me go ahead and create a task for that. And I'm going to go ahead and type the name of that project as the task name. And let's go ahead and actually just create the task, and we can talk about some of these other items once we create the task and jump inside the task. So I'm going to create the task now. And now you can see we have our first task, being the best version of yourself campaign. So let me go ahead and click on the task and talk a little bit more about some of the different features that you have within the task themselves. So opening up this task, you can see there's a lot going on here, right? There's a lot of things that we can actually start to utilize. Let's start off by talking a little bit about your statuses. When I click on the status here, you'll notice that we're using the default statuses that were created when we created our space. Here we've got very simple statuses. We've just got to do, in progress, complete. My suggestion to you as a best practice is actually try to keep your statuses as simple as this if you can. So let's go ahead and mark this as in progress because we want to start working on it. Next, let's go ahead and add an assignee. So I'm actually going to assign this to myself. And I did want to talk a little bit about assignees in ClickUp. So as a best practice, when you're adding assignees to your tasks, it's always important to keep your assignees singular if you can. So try to keep your assignees to one person. This way, we know who is responsible for this task, and especially who's responsible for this task at the given stage of your status. Now, you might have more than one person that typically works on a task at the same time. I would still suggest trying to keep your assignees singular. So try to decide who really owns that task. And then you also do have the ability to add additional people to work on your tasks with you by using what we call watchers. So in the upper right-hand corner here, notice that there's this little bell, and here's where we can add watchers to our tasks. Watchers are people that we want to be able to be notified of what we're working on in our tasks. So maybe we have a manager that we want to make sure has oversight on this task. Maybe there's somebody that works on the review of these tasks with us. And so we want to add those people to the task so that they get the updates of the tasks, but we don't want those people to be the assignees. So that's where we're using our watchers. Next, we've got our due dates and our priority. Some teams use a combination of these. Some teams only use one or the other. For today, I'm just going to use priority. So here we can set the priority of that task to indicate that, yes, we want to prioritize this. Yes, we want to work on it. And some teams even just use priority as their way of organizing their work. Coming down here, you'll notice that we also have the ability to add a description to your task. And this is one of the first places where I'm going to start to talk a little bit about AI. So here you have the ability to add a description to the task. That way, anybody that gets tagged in that task, either as an assignee or a watcher, will have all of the context around the work that's taking place. Now, we've connected AI to ClickUp, so I can just go ahead and click Write with AI. And what I'm going to do here is choose the Write a Description option. And the AI is going to take the name of the task and actually create a description based off of the name of the task. So let's go ahead and insert that description below. So here is a basic description of the task. Maybe I'd even want AI to add more details to the description of this task, including the steps we need to take to create the campaign. And here you can see AI has now read the name of the task, the description that it actually had come up with previously, and now it's coming up with all of the steps to create the campaign. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is click Insert below, and now we have a much more robust task that, again, anytime anybody gets tagged in this task, they will see this description and they will understand the full context of the work that's taking place here and even the steps that we're going to go through to complete this project. Coming down here, you can see we've got 3 new tabs. We've got details, subtasks, and action items. So instead of taking all of these items and using them in your statuses, as I mentioned previously, my suggestion to you would be to actually use these as subtasks instead. You could use action items. Action items and subtasks are relatively similar. The difference between action items and subtasks is that action items are typically like a checklist. So if you had items that you wanted to make sure that people did as part of a checklist, as a part of your tasks, as you start to create more regular tasks and maybe even create task templates, that's where checklists would be really useful. With your checklist, you'll notice you only have the ability to add assignees to checklists. Alternatively, we have our subtasks. Subtasks have all of the same features and functionality that you would have inside of a task. And with AI, we can actually have the AI suggest subtasks for us. So I'm going to go ahead and choose suggest subtasks here. And the AI is going to look at our task description, and then come up with the subtasks for us that we might want to use for this task. Okay, so there's a lot here, and maybe I only want to do some of these and not all of them. So let me just go ahead and toggle the ones that I'd like to incorporate. I'm going to make this even simpler. And here now you can see we've got our task description, and we've got our subtask mapping the process that we want to go through to create this project. Heading back over to our details tab, this is where you're going to be able to see your custom fields. And you can see I've actually already got a reviewer custom field that I've added to this list. So if you have a review process or any type of sub-process or any additional context that you'd like to capture as data points in your tasks, that's where your custom fields come in. So here we've already got a reviewer custom field. So this is a person custom field where we can add in an individual as a reviewer on the task. And maybe we also want to add a process to capture that review. If you ever have a sub-process or complexity in your process, definitely capture that as a custom field instead of in your statuses. So here, let's go ahead and create a new field. We're going to do a drop-down custom field. And what's great is we've also got the ability to use AI in our drop-down custom field. So let's go ahead and create a field name here. I'm just going to call this review process. Maybe we'll call it campaign review process to be a little bit more specific. And here I can go ahead and even suggest options with the AI. So I'm going to go ahead and suggest the options here. And the AI is actually going to come up with those sort of sub-process statuses for me to incorporate. Now you'll notice that we've also got the ability to fill our custom fields with AI. What that would mean is that the AI would actually go through your task, read through the description, updates to that description, read your messages and communications on that task back and forth, and actually add updates to the custom field on your behalf. But in this case, let's just keep this as a manual process. So I'm going to keep this as a standard field, not an AI custom field. And we're going to use these suggestions from the AI. So let's go ahead and create that field as well. So now we have the ability to add a reviewer to this task, and we have the ability to add a campaign review process. So let me go ahead and add those fields to update that data. And now it looks like our task is in a pretty good place, and it's ready to kick off and start the campaign process. One final thing that I might want to do here is just tag Alicia in this task and let her know that she's going to be a reviewer. So here, let me go over to the right-hand side of our tasks. This is where you're going to see all of the activity of the task. So here you'll be able to see anytime any updates are made to the task, they'll be captured in the activity box. And then at the bottom here, I have the ability to add comments. So Alicia's been added as a reviewer. I just want to make sure that she's aware of that. So let me just go ahead and click the @ button. By clicking @, I can tag other team members that are connected to ClickUp into my tasks. Let's tag Alicia in this task and just say, I've added you as a reviewer here. By tagging Alicia in this task, what that's going to do is actually automatically add Alicia as a watcher if she wasn't one already. And now, as a watcher, as mentioned previously, Alicia is going to get all of the same updates to the tasks that I'm going to get as the assignee. So anytime the task status is updated, anytime new messages are added to this task, all of that information is actually going to filter into Alicia and my inbox for us to keep track of all the work that's taking place. Now, I want to get to our inbox next, but I did just want to take a moment to add that as you're working on things inside of ClickUp, you do have the ability to add files and attachments. And here's where you have the ability to add docs to your task. So as we're coming up with this campaign, let's say that we needed a document to capture all the details of the campaign. So let's go ahead and add an attachment to this task, and we're going to use a ClickUp doc. ClickUp docs have a ton of benefits that you don't typically get in other documents. We could actually spend an entire webinar just talking about the benefits of ClickUp docs. Things like the ability to use AI and tag teammates and connect your tasks to the docs themselves. For today, let's keep things relatively simple. I'm just going to go ahead and add some basic information to this doc. So let's add the title of this doc. Let's go ahead and actually, I'm going to type AI. I'm going to write with AI, and I'm just going to say, create a plan. And you can see that it's already coming up with things like the potential target audience, key messages, strategies, timeline, metrics for success, a budget, and team roles. And let's go ahead and insert this into the doc just as an example. And what you can do now is just make changes to all the information instead of having to come up with it yourself. And as you're making changes to this doc, or as there's information that you want to tag your teammates in, this is where I wanted to show you that you can actually add comments and even tag people into the specific work that you're doing. So here in the target audience, let me go ahead and add a comment. I'm going to comment here. I'm going to type Alicia again. And I'm just going to say, hey, Alicia, what do you think of this target audience? And so along with the comment that I added on the task, Alicia's now going to see this comment that I've assigned to her about the target audience. And both of these comments are going to end up in her inbox, which is where I want to go next. Now that we've come up with our project and the documentation for our project, let's go ahead and close this out and talk a little bit more about some of the other tools that you have access to in ClickUp. So the first tool I want to talk about is your inbox. And you've probably noticed going up to the top here, this is where your inbox will be. So as any updates are made to your tasks or the projects that you're tagged in or working on, all of those updates are going to land in your inbox. By clicking on your inbox, this is going to be your centralized location where you can manage all the updates to your work. And here you can see that there's lots of different messages that I've received as a part of all the projects that I'm working on. And what's really cool is ClickUp will automatically show you your important messages, so things that you're tagged in, things that you're assigned to, messages that team members have tagged you in, or messages and tasks that you're following will all show here. You also have the ability to see other messages, snoozed messages, and cleared messages as you clear them out. One final best practice I have for you with regard to your inbox, try to turn off all of your email notifications in ClickUp and just work out of ClickUp. The benefit of managing all of your notifications and updates in ClickUp itself is that those updates are connected to these specific projects. So if I were to click on a particular message, you can see it's actually going to open up the task itself that we're working on here. And again, I can come down here, I can get all of that context that I wouldn't have if I was doing this in an email. So I've got two tips left for you. One is to start using favorites, and the other is to start using views. If you ever need to keep track of locations or specific work that you're working on, what you may want to do, let's go ahead and jump to our intake list here. What you may want to do is add those projects to your favorites. So in this case, let's use this being the best version of yourself campaign as something that I want to save, all I need to do here is click on the ellipses, and here I have the ability to add this to my favorites and add the star here. Now I have a quick reference to any location or any task that I'm working out of. And they're all going to show up in your favorites here. So if I open up my favorites, here you can see all of the lists that I've saved or the tasks that I've saved that I'm working on. And if you want to create an easy, quick reference for yourself, you've got this pin icon here. So by pinning my favorites to the top, I now have the ability to always have these things that I want to make sure that I'm focusing on at the top of the screen that I can jump to anytime that I need. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about how to create views for yourself. Views are definitely one of the most powerful aspects of ClickUp. A lot of teams like to use board views. Also, you'll notice we've got about a dozen views that you can use across tables, dashboards, timelines, Gantt charts. Any way that you need to view your work, you have that ability in ClickUp. So let's just create a very basic view for ourselves to begin with. Let's just say that as work was being added to this list, there started to be lots of projects and lots of work that maybe I wasn't specifically assigned to, and it started to become difficult for me to find and manage my work. If that starts to happen to you, you have the ability to create views to better manage the work for yourself. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go up here and I'm going to click plus view. And here, maybe I actually like to work in board view, like a Kanban board. So let's create a new board view. And here, now I'm looking at the tasks just reorganized in the format of a board. But you can see that all the other tasks are kind of in my way. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to use what we call me mode. Me mode is going to show the person who's currently viewing this just the tasks that are assigned to them. So now instead of looking at everybody's work, I can look at just the work that's assigned to me. So here I'd be able to see a nice visual version of the work of the task that I'm specifically assigned on. And I have the ability to manage this work as it goes from in progress to complete. So that's really everything that I wanted to cover today. I know we covered a ton of information. So we talked about how to orient yourself inside the platform, how to create that hierarchy and set yourself up for success. From there, we talked about how to create your first task. We talked about inside of the tasks, all of the different information and features that you have available to you within your tasks. From there, we talked a little bit about your inbox, how you can use your inbox to help you manage all the updates to your work and updates to your projects that are happening inside the platform. And then finally, we talked a little bit about views and how you can use views to better manage and focus on the work that's important to you. So as mentioned, I wanted to take a few extra minutes to answer any of your questions that you had live. So if you have any questions about anything that you've seen so far, feel free to drop that in the Q&A. I'm going to select a few of those questions and go through them with you together now live.
All right, awesome. So hopefully, I know that there was a lot of information in that session. I'm taking a moment here to try and just collate some of the questions that have come in. I saw a lot of questions, which is really cool. So if you don't mind, I'm going to stick around for an additional couple of minutes. I know we were planning to finish right at 1:30. I'll stick around for an extra 5 or so minutes just to answer as many questions as I can. I saw some questions that came through that are relatively advanced. I'd love to answer those, and it's really cool how engaged some of you are. If you're looking for sort of like the next step in this session, so if you are a little bit more advanced and you want to see how to build out a workflow using forms and automations and templates and things like that, definitely be sure to check out our next webinar. So I'm going to go ahead and drop that in the chat for everyone. And let me see if I can pin that message for you as well. Okay, so that message is now pinned in the chat. So there's a link there if you want to sign up for the Build Your First Workflow webinar. Also, just wanted to call out the resources doc. So I did see some feedback that the link to the beginner certification wasn't working. I'll make sure to review that and update that. So that would be the other thing to make sure you check out. So in our resources, and again, there's a link to that in the upper right-hand corner where your docs are. just go ahead and check out the ClickUp University Beginners webinar certification. So if you wanted to take things a little bit more slowly, you do have the ability to do it there step by step. And then the last thing I wanted to call out is just that this session was in fact recorded. We will make sure to get that recording out to you. So I know that there was a lot covered, and you may just want to watch it in your own time at your own pace, or watch it a few times just to make sure that you catch everything that we talked about. All right, all that being said, I saw some amazing questions, and I do want to take some time to just make sure that I answer some of those. All right, so let's see. And I'm going to try and organize these kind of based off of the features in ClickUp. So maybe I'm going to start off with just some high-level functionality. So there's questions about forms, calendar, recurring tasks, and dependencies. I think I'll start with those. So actually, so let me head over to my instance of ClickUp here. So I'm currently in my workspace, and we do now have a new calendar feature that you should have access to. So your calendar feature is going to be in the upper left-hand corner here. You'll see there's a little calendar icon. You do have the ability to connect both a Google Calendar or an Outlook calendar. And there's some really amazing functionality here in that it's a two-way sync between those other types of those other calendar platforms. So if I open up my calendar here, one thing that's nice is that the calendar is actually going to suggest work or tasks that I'm currently assigned to that I can go ahead and actually schedule based off of my availability. So I can click on that task and click on the auto schedule button, and it's actually going to take, based off of that, the allotted time that I have for that task, it'll find slots in my calendar where it can find spaces for me to actually schedule the work that I'm going to do on those tasks. Now, along with that, you also have the ability to pull work in from your backlog here, so you can kind of choose any location in ClickUp that you'd like to pull up all the tasks from that location. So let me just go ahead and jump to my marketing team tasks here. And you do have the ability to then, let's see if that's going to work. There we go. You do have the ability to then drag those tasks right into your calendar and schedule those. So if you're like me, you kind of live out of your calendar, you like to schedule things in your calendar, you can absolutely use your calendar to do so. Also, if you come down to the lower bar here, this is where you can set up meetings with other teammates. So you can tag another teammate in your calendar. Their calendar will immediately become available to you, and it'll help you in order to block time, to find time with your teammates. So there's a ton going on in the calendar here. We actually did an entire webinar just on the calendar. You can check that out on our YouTube page. Another question that came up was just in regard to forms, and then I think people wanted to ask about dependencies as well. So let me head back to our workspace. I think the first thing I'll just talk about quickly is forms. So forms, just be aware, forms are what we call a view in ClickUp. So you do need to tie a form to a location. So essentially you would tie it to a list. Your list is basically the place that houses all of your tasks. So for example, in my ongoing projects list here, or my intake list here, this is where all the current tasks are that we're looking at that are part of that intake process. And all I'm going to do here is to add a form. It's going to be using the plus view button here. And then you're just going to want to choose a form. And then when you do choose to add a form view, you'll see the view is now available here. If I wanted to go back to my list, it's right there. And here you can see all the different options for creating forms. So we actually just updated forms just recently. And now when you create a new form, we've got all of these helpful templates for you as well. So these are a great starting point. So for example, in this webinar today, we talked a little bit about using forms for intake. So if you do want to try that, I would definitely recommend checking out the project intake form. But you can use forms for other things as well, like feedback or an order form. All of these templates are here for you to test out and try out. And then I think the other thing, and by the way, we are going to cover forms in much more detail in the Build Your First Workflow webinar. So definitely, if you want to check out forms in greater detail and walk through actually the creation of a form and some of the features there, check out the Build Your First Workflow webinar next week. And then I did want to talk a little bit about dependencies. I saw that come up a couple times. And there's a few ways that you can manage dependencies in ClickUp. So dependencies would be, the question that came through was essentially, if I have tasks that are finishing, how do I organize tasks that start based off of the due date? of a previous task. And so there's two ways to do that. You could do it via dependencies, or you could do it via automations. So we'll just start with how to actually add dependencies to ClickUp. So on any of your tasks, you'll have these three dots, your ellipses. And if you click on the three dots here, you're going to open up all the different options that you have for your tasks. And so from here, you'll see that I actually have a dependencies option on my task. So what I can do here is I can add a waiting on dependency, a blocking dependency, or just link two tasks together if I want to create a relationship between those two tasks, but they don't actually depend on each other. So if you're trying to create that waiting on dependency where one task has to be completed before another task starts, you can create that here. Similarly, a blocking dependency, so a task wouldn't be able to start until the task previously is completed. If you wanted to visualize that, again, that's where your views come in. So very quickly, let me just show you how to add a Gantt chart. So if you wanted to do things on a Gantt, you can organize your tasks based off of start dates and due dates. So you can add your tasks in here. You can choose your start date and end date, and then you can add additional tasks in and schedule things out this way. And then there's a lot you can do with Gantt charts. We're actually going to be doing another webinar just on workload and Gantt very soon. But just to show you how you can create those dependencies really easily in your Gantt charts, you can drag and drop dependencies in ClickUp. So I can actually drag from the end date of the previous task to the start date of the next task to create that dependency if I want to in a visual way, and it actually creates that dependency on the platform. All right, maybe we got time for one last question. Okay, let's see. Oh, okay, I'll answer two more questions. So there was one question about agile methodology. Believe it or not, we just are about to release a new workshop on agile methodology in ClickUp, and we do have plans to run, we have actually run a webinar on agile methodology as well. So you can find that in our on our YouTube page. So we've actually got a webinar that walks you through kind of software development or an agile workflow, working with sprints and Kanban in ClickUp. And then the other question was just about workload view. So the reason that I'm smiling is because we've actually got another webinar completely dedicated to the workload view updates that are coming. So there was a question about workload and capacity. So yes, we do have features that cover both workload and capacity in ClickUp. That's going to be what's called your workload view. So again, going back to our views, all you need to do is add a workload view here. And in your workload view, this is where you're going to be able to see across your team members. You'll be able to set their capacity here. And then as you assign tasks out to those team members, you'll be able to see how much time is allocated across those tasks. And you can choose, whether that's daily scheduled, whether that's, looking across the time period of a day, a week, or monthly. So I know that that's really brief overview of workload. Just be aware, we do have an upcoming webinar on workload view itself. That'll be next week as well. And by the way, if you do sign up for any of those future webinars, you'll get access to the recordings as well. So I know that that was a lot to take in. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody for joining today. Didn't have time to answer all of the questions because you had so many, which was amazing. But just wanted to say one more time, thanks so much for joining. This session was recorded. We'll definitely make sure to get that recording out to you. Along with that recording, we're going to send out the link to this doc. So you'll have all the resources along with that recording as well. And I'll make sure that we've updated the link here to the ClickUp for Beginners certification if you want to head over to the university and complete that certification. So just wanted to say thanks again. Thanks for joining, and hope to see you in our upcoming sessions.